make this video because there's some extremely flawed mechanics in Crossroads. You know, core mechanics, even, you could say. These mechanics, you know, are the foundation of the gameplay, and if you don't get these right, then it's just going to be a snowball effect, and you're going to have mediocre / broken gameplay throughout your tavern experience. And this is, you know, that old school tavern where it's an inn and a pub. The inside of things is, you know, it's okay. People can rent rooms and stuff like that. That works fine, and you can make money off that. Where the real issue is the bar / pub mechanics. Primarily the waitresses. I mean, there's a lot of problems with Crossroads. But I'll get into that later. Right now, I want to get into the waitresses. So, as you can see here, I have a couple waitresses, and down here I have a few more waitresses sleeping. Nothing wrong there. As you can see, I have a large number of waitresses. I have, I believe, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, 8. Right? 8 waitresses. I have approximately 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 seats, or 13 people in this tavern that they need to be looking after. 8 waitresses for 13 people, right? Look at this. Three waitresses just standing there when everybody here is in need of something. Food, beverage, whatever. It's just standing there. Let's look at the stats here. Look at this. There are no negative traits. This chick has no negative traits, right? Her focus, this is very respectable. Her it's waiting tables is the highest priority. Everything else is off. Just now starting. The other two still standing around. The third one came in. She's standing around now. Just now getting into it. She's just now getting into it. Still standing there. By the way, none of these people have, or none of these waitresses have, you know, really negative traits. The most negative trait that a few of them have are their, you know, they'll stop and smoke a pipe. But it's obvious, you know, when they smoke the pipe, you can tell what they're doing. It's a negative trait, so they're smoking the pipe. This is not a negative trait. They don't have any traits to justify these actions. Look how many of them are just standing there. For fuck's sake, man. Still, very few people have been waited on. And look at this. I mean, it's how can you possibly expect this game to work when this kind of shit is happening? Right? Mind you, this is, you know, in this setup, I had to set this up. Look at this shit. They don't even have to, they don't even have to make anything. I've got the beer. Those shouldn't even be in there, by the way. I don't know how they're in there. They're putting them in there for some reason. And it shouldn't even be possible if you look at the storage features. These are the only things that can be stored in there. And yet they're putting food in there, excuse me. And the same goes for the food, right? Going into food, storage, got a bunch of pre-made. All of it's pre-made. They don't have to do shit. And yet, look at this. They're just standing around, almost doing nothing, while fucking the customers, just nothing. It's nothing. What is this game? Is it totally broken or what? Alright, let's go into the... Fucking shit. Look at their levels even. Level 8. 5. I mean, these aren't like shitty. You know what I mean? These aren't like level 1s. Oh my god, it's like, it doesn't even make any sense. And the way they're responding, right? It's too similar with one another. There's some sort of broken mechanic here where it's triggering every one of them. Like, they are not allowed to do more than a certain amount at this stage. Maybe it's because at level 10, maybe, they advance and they can do more. But still, it takes a long time to get to level 10. And to not be able to wait, for the waitresses to not be able to wait on just 13 people, like, to have this kind of difficulty, this is absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. This is a broken, literally, it's broken. You understand? The primary mechanic for the pub portion of the tavern is broken. Right? And before this, it was, it's fixed somewhat now, right? Is nobody would sweep, or everybody would do everything other than what they were supposed to. A recent update, they allowed for, where is it? Up in here. They added this, finally, off mechanics, right? Because none of the fucking workers would do what they were supposed to, so the dev literally had to just be like, oh, I'll put in an off mechanic, since I can't stop these fucking workers from doing shit they're not supposed to be doing, right? And that was kind of a no-brainer thing to be in there in the first place, alright? I also want to point out that the save game, look at this, right? The autosaves. It saves an autosave every day. Every day, right? I had 600 autosaves in here. I had to delete. It took me like 7 or 8 minutes to delete all the unnecessary ones that were in here. Every day. How broken does your fucking game have to be to where it has to save every single day to avoid, lost data, because it's so likely that it's going to crash or just whatever. You know what I mean? I've had so many problems. For example, I mean, I have 70 hours in this game, right? I bought this game shortly after it released, which was totally broken at that point. I mean, a total slap in the face to everybody that supported them on Kickstarter. It's just unreal. I can't believe. Talk about, totally fucking over the people that supported you. This game should have never left early access. That was almost a year ago now, right? So it's come a long way, but it's no longer in early access. I would still like to point that out. And it still has these kind of problems. And I played just recently, just today, right? 4.5 hours, and it crashed 6 times. 6 times in 4.5 hours, right? And like I said, how you must have like no confidence in your skill as a programmer if you have to have something autosave for you every single day and you can't even turn it off. Or how about this? You have it save a maximum of 10 days, right? That's plenty. You don't need this huge fucking list of autosaves that, you've got to go back to just because, maybe a quest line is broken or some shit, and you have no choice but to go back 4 or 5 hours. But you know what? If the game is that broken, it's got no business being on full release. You understand? So if you can't at least have the decency to, to get this shit figured out before full release, then maybe the game shouldn't be here. I mean, obviously I'm angry at a lot of the stuff because I've supported this game for quite some time, and it's just the modern dev, you know what I mean? The early access bullshit, and then they're getting the money they need, and yet for some reason progress it's disgustingly slow, and tons of shit's just broken. I want to say that it's come a long way though. Like the floor for like editing floors and stuff like that. I only have one floor right now because this was supposed to be like a sample, like a test. I've got everything laid out so, you know, you can clearly see everything testing. But look at this. Still, look at all the standing around, nothing happening. It's just, holy shit, man. It's very frustrating, right? It's extremely frustrating. This is not a difficult concept, right? I mean, let you think about it. You go into a restaurant. How many waitresses or waiters do they have, right? 3. 3 for an entire restaurant. 3. Right? I have 8. And this is a, what? Let's say that's we'll say that table's 3, 4, we'll say 4 feet long. So this space, we'll say that's about 6 feet, 7 feet, 14, 21, 21 by 21. A 21 by 21 space requires 8 waitresses. Fucking 8. And most of them stand around doing it. By the way, this is... you can see the complaints, right? You sit here long enough, and this is all that's all you're going to see. It's just poor service, poor service, poor service, poor service. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing I can do about it, right? You know how frustrating that is? It doesn't matter how well you set this up, how few people there are here. This is always going to be the complaint. Poor service. It's a fucking joke, man. It's a fucking joke. It's just... So let's get into some other stuff too. Let's talk about some logic, right? Logic. Common sense, right? It's super important to games like this. Like, just incredibly important. Like the UI, the interface and stuff, it's good. It's fine. It's right. But it's the logic behind a lot of it. Look how muddled this space is. Look at all this shit that pops up. All this unnecessary stuff clogging, cluttering your screen. Look how many people are walking around in here unnecessarily. Like I said, those 8 waitresses in this tiny little space, still getting nothing done. Right? The sweepers. How many sweepers I had to hire for this tiny little inn. It just creates this unprofessional look, this unclean look. For starters, I should definitely be able to turn these off. These little overhead hovers, right? I'd probably put them, if I was making this game, I would probably put them here. You see how you can turn these on and off? Each section would have a overhead check mark. Right here. Boom, 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 boom. Excuse me. Garlic. 5 check marks. Super easy to do. Overhead info or something like that when you highlight it. Hover over just to give you some indication of what the check mark is. Bam. That way you can turn off. So let's say if you want to be following the waitresses, you know, every move you just have her check mark on, turn everybody else's check mark off above, and you clear up a ton of this crap that you already have set and you no longer need to be watching. Right? And then this, right here. It's early in the game, right? Okay? I don't have anything unlocked. I can't even buy this fat. The fat that is needed to fill whatever torch that is. The outside torch, right? Can't even buy it. So the only alternative is to delete this stuff. Why even have the icons there? Why not just have them on some sort of notification list? You are low on fat or whatever. It's more stuff cluttering the space. That is a space that's already cluttered, for shit's sake. I mean, you get stuff like this. This is kind of unavoidable, though. But again, it's more clutter, more stuff. It's adding to it. It's creating this claustrophobic feel of this cramped space when it's not actually that cramped. Okay? So it's quite a design flaw. And let's get back into the waitress info. Another common sense kind of logic thing here. Okay. Where is it? Okay. Fatigue. Right? Loyalty. Loyalty, the higher this goes up, the more loyalty you have, right? The higher the mood, the better her mood. And yet, for some reason, the higher the fatigue bar, the higher it is, the less fatigue you actually have. Right? How fucking confusing is that? So in other words, these bars, they go up, right? And that means good. This bar goes up. It just doesn't... Oh my god. So fatigue, in other words, this should be, the higher this goes up, the more fatigue you have, basically. See, that's what it's telling me here. Not only that, but when I hover over these, there's no definition. There's no definition. Like, what is loyalty in this game? How does that affect skills? How does that affect the performance? What, mood? It should tell me. These little tips. I should be able to hover over these, and it should tell me. Fatigue. How does this affect the waitress? How does fatigue affect the waitress? I shouldn't have to guess at stuff like this. I mean, a quick little tool tip, and it eliminates the guesswork, right? I don't need hand holding, but stuff like this, where it's impossible to determine what effects are happening because of the kind of game it is and how it was created. Like, for all I know, these bars don't actually do shit, and they're just a visual thing. You know what I mean? Tons of devs do that scammy shit now. Like, I could go into Unity and create little fucking bars right now and have them slowly regenerate and degenerate with just some fucking simple programming. The point is you need to know this stuff works, and you need to see how it's working, right? And the lower fatigue you have generally means, if you have less fatigue, that's a good thing. More fatigue is a bad thing. So when these bars go up, these are good, but for some reason when this bar goes up, it's bad. But it's not, actually. Fatigue is a bad thing, is what I'm trying to say. I'm making this confusing. So when people sleep, the fatigue bar maxes out, right? That should be a bad thing. Max fatigue is bad. But the bar, it's actually good. See how that's confusing? So that's how you know it's worded wrong. It should be energy, right? If energy is maxed out, that's a good thing. They're refreshed. Or at least reverse the bar. If it's fatigue, the more fatigue you have, obviously that would be bad. Fatigue is bad. The less fatigue would be better. So the bar should be going in reverse, basically. Or word it differently. Call it energy. And that's how it is, because when they sleep, the fatigue bar goes all the way up. And so obviously, it's not a bad effect when the bar goes all the way up. It's a good effect. So they're refreshed, and yet the fatigue bar, it's called fatigue, and it's max. So that's another logic, flaw. Another thing confusing the overall. And that's the thing. That's what is making this whole thing fall apart, is the common sense stuff. If you can't get the basic stuff on lockdown, right? Then you're going to get into that snowball effect, where this isn't going to make sense because this new other thing isn't making sense. So now you've got two things that aren't adding up when they should be, and now you're getting into this, like I said, a snowball effect, right? In this game, it has a huge amount of potential. This is like a game I've wanted to make for a really long time, right? And that's why it's so frustrating. Right, so there's effort being put here, but I don't see the passion in the project. It's like, are the devs playing this fucking game or not? Have we been testing it after full release for, what, over a year now? Really frustrating. They're working on it, but you know what? It's too late for that shit, you know? I need to hear, like, this huge fucking apology. That's what I need to hear. Because this style of developing games is unacceptable. It's a huge fuck you to everybody that bought your game. Right? This is not how you develop games. And it's a completely asshole thing to do. If you're a piece of shit, you know what? It's like, I'm not saying the devs are a piece of shit, but you know what? It's a piece of shit thing to do. You know what I'm saying? This is on the border of scamming. You get into that territory where lies, deceit, and scamming. It's right in there. You know, because this is not... At launch, I couldn't believe this game. It was garbage. It was totally fucking broken. Alright. Anyways, enough with the rant. Alright, so there's other things too. Right? There's always going to be more. So you click on shift. Okay. And suddenly these effects no longer matter, right? I don't have cleaning on. Or anything, actually. It's just waiting tables and innkeeping. And yet, when I click on to shift, turn on shift mode, have her work a shift. We'll just say that. Actually, turn break off. And she'll be sweeping, even though I have cleaning off. So it's another thing that isn't working properly. Also, you'll see that she is a waiter. A fucking waiter was just cooking. See, how can you create a strategy around mechanics that aren't stable? That's the thing. You know what I'm saying? That this is a simulation game. These are games where this is the fundamental stuff. The core stuff. These are the things that need to be working exactly the way you'd think that they'd work. You know, if I have sweeping turned off on somebody, they need to never, ever be sweeping, because that is core to the strategy I'm trying to create, or, you know, this whole thing. You know what I mean? You can't have that kind of shit happening. And again, I'm angry because of how fucking long this game has been out now. Stuff's getting done on it. That's great. But you know what? That's the equivalent of somebody shoving their fist in your ass and you saying thank you for it. Catch my drift? You know, you don't... There's this false sense of community around this bullshit way of developing now. And it's unreal. It's absolutely unreal. Kissing developer ass for completely fucking up on development. Yeah, that's... Holy crap, man. So as you can see, there's just flat out a lot. This is really simple here. It's a really simple layout. There should be absolutely nothing not working. Very straightforward shit here. Very.